This week's parasha is Parashas Tetzaveh, and I'd like to focus on some of the one aspect of the parasha, which is the importance of the garments of the Kohen Gadol. The parasha talks about the garments of the Kohen Gadol. So let me just read the verses, not all of the verses, but I'll read the general commandment, and then I'll tell you why it's so meaningful to me, and then we'll look at some explanations about it. So it says in chapter 28, verse 1, it says, Vata saron achicha, bring close to you Aaron your brother, and his Vespanavito, and his sons with him, Mitoch b'nei Israel, from amongst the children of Israel, L'chanoli, to serve me. Aaron, Nadav, Avio, Elazar, Itamar, b'nei Aaron. So these are the children. Aaron and his children have to serve. Va'asita bigdei kodesh, Aaron achicha. You have to make the holy garments for Aaron your brother. V'chavod u'tifaret. And these garments that you have to make are for honor and for glory. I'm going to come back to that. You should speak al kol chachmei lev asher melechid ruach chachma. You have to have the proper people who have wisdom to make the garments. The big day Aaron and these are the garments. Just two more verses, and this is the general concept about the garments. The Ela begadim, these are the garments. These are the garments. Asher yasu, that you shall make. Choshen ve'ephod. This is for the Kohen Gadol. You have to make a breastplate, which is something that went over the chest. The ephod. Ephod is interestingly not described anywhere in the Talmud or in the Torah. So Rashi says he thinks it's what the medieval noblewomen used to wear when they rode their horses. Because the story is that his students didn't know why he was looking at a woman. He was staring at the noblewoman, and they didn't know what was going on. He said, now I understand what the ephod is. Rashi saw a woman, and he said, oh, now I understand the Torah. And then there is the me'il. This is a robe. Ketona tashbeit, that is a tunic. We learn about the me'il and menachos. It had pomegranates and bells on it. And then there's the tunic. And then there's the mitznefet, which is the turban, the avnate. And then there's the belt. And then there's two others. So this verse 4 only lists 6 of the garments. It lists the choshen, the ephod, the me'il, the ketonet, the mitznefet, the avnate. It lists 6 of the garments, but it's missing 2. What are the other 2 garments? One is the milchnasayim. He wore the breeches underneath his robe. And then the other garment, anybody know which one we haven't read here yet? And this is the one which is, of all the garments, there are 2 of these garments that we kind of wear today. 2 of these garments. One is the avnate, that's the belt, when we wear the garto and put a belt around ourselves when we daven. And then the other is the tzitzit, the strings. When we wear the tzitzit, with the strings on our talis, then we're like mini kohanim. And this is the 8th garment of the Kohen, was not the tzitzit, but the tzitz. He wore a golden forehead plate on his head, and it said Kodesh Hashem. It said holy to Hashem. So when each of us wears a tzitzit, we're like, it's like we're wearing the tzitz to a certain degree, and I'll show you why in a moment. V'heim yachu et hazahav, and what materials do they use? Gold, v'tatchelet. Tchelet is something we're discussing in the Talmud these days, so I'll go to the Talmud in a moment. V'targaman, the purple, the toat shani, the crimson, v'tashesh. and the linen. Talmud actually says in today's Daf Yomi that the Kohen Gadol points out, I mean, you see it right here in the verse, Techelet is the blue dye, which is attached to wool, and Sheish is linen. So even though there's a prohibition against wearing wool and linen together, the Kohen Gadol would in fact wear the wool and linen together. He was allowed to while he was serving. Be'idan da'avad. While he was serving, he was wearing this wool and linen together. So the tzitzit that we wear, they are the only times that we are obligated to wear the techelet, but the techelet was a very big part of the garments that, not only the garments of the Kohen Gadol, but also of the materials used in the Mishkan. And so therefore, when we wear the tzitzit with the techelet, we're becoming royalty. Tchel was in the ancient world was a color that was reserved for royalty. And so therefore, when we wear these garments, it's as though we ourselves are Kohanim and we are acting like royalty and we are servants of the world. And that's part of our responsibility. Just to talk a little bit about the tchelet, which is on the tzitzit, because I just want to, we can't not mention it since it was talked about in today's Daf Yomi. So I'll just very briefly share with you a couple of things about the tchelet. What was the color of the tchelet? The Talmud says in Menachot Mem Gimel 43, "Man ishtana tchelet mikol minei tzivonin." Why was the tchelet chosen to be such a holy color? It's attached to the garments of the Kohen Gadol. When it says tzitz on the tzitz, Kodesh Hashem, it was attached to his forehead through tchelet strings. So why is the tchelet singled out for the tzitzit? So the Talmud says, because the tchelet is similar to the color of the sea. Meaning to say, when you look at the tchelet, you're reminded of the splitting of the sea, that miracle that God did for us. And the blue of the tchelet is close to the color of the sea. V'rikia l'kisei hakavod. And the sea, the yam and the sea is similar to the rakia, is similar to the heavens. We look at the sea, look at your tchelet on the tzitzit, you're reminded of the sea. And when you look at the sea, you're reminded of the heavens. And then when you look at the heavens, you're reminded of the throne of glory. Because how do we know that the throne of glory is blue as well? Because it states in the verse, and under God's feet was like sapphire brickwork, like the essence of the heaven in purity. So Hashem's throne of glory is similar to the sapphire. So when you're seeing the techeles, again, the blue strings that are attached to the tzitzit, we're reminded of the one who sits on the throne of glory. And so therefore, the garments of the Kohen Gadol were also supposed to evoke the Kisei HaKavod, the glorious throne of Hashem. And so therefore, we should imagine that when the people were spectators watching the Kohen Gadol perform the service, they must have evoked within them the concept of the attachment to the heavens. And so too, when a person kisses the fringes of the tzitzit, it's as though they're kissing the throne of glory. Now, the phrase I want to focus on one more thing about the tchelet. Where did the tchelet come from? This is just something that I need to emphasize, where did the tchelet come from? They were very rare and very expensive. They still are very expensive. They're not so rare anymore because we discovered where they come from. But the Talmud refers to them as the chila zone. It comes from the achila zone, which we know today we've identified as a snail, even though not everybody is willing to accept that, but it's clear that that's what it is. And the Talmud says the body of this snail is similar, the color of its body is similar to that of the sea, and its anatomy is similar to that of a fish. But doesn't mean it's like a fish, because the Talmud here says Ubriato domela dag. Its anatomy is similar to a fish. That's not exact. The word dag does not always mean fish in the Talmud, because elsewhere we know that the chilazon has a shell that grows with it. And Rashi in Sanhedrin calls it a worm. So based on these sources, the chilazon would seem to be a kind of mollusk or snail. And in fact, Rashi, to attracted avodah zarah, translates the chilazon into Old French as limas or limak. I'm not trying to pronounce it, which means snail. So a dog does not mean a fish, but a marine creature. Anyway, so the body is similar, looks like the sea, and it's the anatomy of a sea creature. And it only comes out from the water onto the land once every 70 years. Now, it doesn't mean that the chilazon can only be attained once every 70 years. It just means it comes up from the water onto the dry land once every 70 years. And the Gemara in Shabbos speaks of fishermen whose job it was to hunt the chilazons in the Mediterranean between Haifa and Tyre. And the Zohar states that the chilazon is found in the Sea of Galilee. So the chilazons were able to be, we could go down and get them, but every few decades they would swarm out of the water onto the land, and they would be available in abundance. And when you wanted, and its blood is blue. That's the point. When you dye the wool with its blood, it becomes blue. This is also, to be clear here, Rabbeinu Tam says this blood that we're referring to, the dam of the chilazon, is not its lifeblood, but a secretion that it has. It secretes a type of blood stored inside it, which is blue. And therefore, because of all these things, it's very expensive. The commentaries, there's a whole discussion about this. There's a whole article about this here. You have to be very careful. If anybody here tries to buy chilazon, if you go into the standard stores, they're going to sell you the wool that was dyed according to the Rajina Rebbe. Let's go back. So for centuries, nobody could identify what the chilazon. And the last mention of it was in the Daf Yomi for today in 43a, where it talked about in the time of Rav Achai Gaon, who passed away in the year 510, and he was referring to they had the chilazon in his time. We also find that the Midrash Tanchuma, which was completed around 750, states nowadays we only have the white threads. The tchelet has been concealed. So from the year 510, we had no mention of it at all. The technology was lost. The identification of this snail was lost. So that's more than more than 1700 years, nobody was mentioning it. Then comes along in 1887, the Rajina Rebbe, Reb Gershon Henoch Leiner, and he's the author of he was a great Rebbe, but he got, in the words of Rav Schachter, he said he got tricked, he got duped, and we'll see. But they're not going to say that in traditional literature, but that's what happened. That he published a book called Sefer Temunei Chol, in which he discussed the possibility to identify the chilazon and reinstitute techeles. And so he says we have to search for it. He says even though it was concealed. And so therefore, he put together a description of the techeles dye based upon the different sources. And then he went to Italy. This Rebbe moved to Italy. The Rajina Rebbe moved to Italy and spent a year at the world famous aquarium in Naples. But he wasn't a real marine biologist, so he was just basing himself upon what some people there who were not Jewish were telling him. And anyway, he studied the different creatures, and he concluded that the cuttlefish, which is a squid-like creature that secretes a black ink when in danger, fitted with the description of the chilazon. And so he returned to Poland with a substantial amount of this creature's blood, and he published his findings in Tal Techeles. By 1889, he had devised a method of producing techeles dye from this blood, and his Hasidim adopted it. But most people rejected it, and the consensus was that he was duped by the non-Jewish marine biologists at the time, and really they showed that it was just it was the color he claimed that was blue was not really from the fish. So in 1913, Rabbi Yitzchak Isaac Halevi Herzog later became the chief rabbi of Israel, and he was the ambassador to Israel from Israel to the United States during the October 7th war was the ambassador Michael Herzog, and the president of Israel now is Isaac Halevi Herzog. They're the grandchildren of the chief rabbi who wrote a doctoral thesis on this topic, the former chief rabbi. So in 1913, he discussed it, and he said that the Radziner Tcheles is not blue because of the secretion, but because of the ingredients added to it when it's subjected to heat. So basically, they added something to it to make it turn blue. And so therefore, he produced the same color using ox blood, and he rejected the Rajiner's thesis. And Rabbi Herzog examined at length the case for a marine snail known as Murex trunculus, and which contains its hypobranchial gland, a body fluid that was used widely in the ancient world for dye production. And that's the one that he suggested. Basically, what happened was his suggestion was kind of ignored until like 35 years ago, when some Zionists, graduates of Yeshiva University, suggested that they should revisit that suggestion. And they supported it. And in fact, Rav Schachter at Yeshiva University wears it on that basis. He's like one of the poskim of America and a posik of the OU, and he wears it. But the yeshiva world, in general, they don't accept it. So that's why today, there's a discussion. Some people wear it. I do wear it, based upon, they published, the Yeshiva University at the time published a whole book on it with all the Rosh Yeshiva writing articles. I wear it, but it's not. I don't think it's ever going to become popular amongst the yeshiva world. But anyway, so that's whether or not we have the tchela today. There's a separate question. Even if we say that this is the tchela today, there's a separate question whether or not this tchelet was used in the tzitzit and also in the garments of also in the materials in the Mishkan, or just for the tzitzit. There's the Gemara knows that there are other blue dye substances which have the exact same chemical properties, but those wouldn't be kosher. The Gemara calls it indigo or kala ilan. So anyway, that's just a little bit of a discussion on the topic. But now going back to what we were talking about here. So what's the reason for the garments? The reason is called it's lechavod u'tifaret, for honor and for glory. And this is the importance of dressing a certain way. And the dress will elevate us spiritually. So the Kohen Gadol has to dress like a rock star. He has to dress like a rock star. When you think about how he dresses, a havdil, he dresses in an unusual way to attract attention. Somebody trying to ask a question?
Yeah, Rabbi, snails aren't kosher, isn't that correct?
You're correct. The snails are not kosher, but we're not eating them. We're just using the dye. But you're absolutely correct.
My question leads to another one. If the snails aren't kosher, why can't you use a blood that has the same qualities and has the same color? And how does that make it non-kosher when the non-kosher blood of the snail is also non-kosher? A little confused as the difference.
Well, this has nothing to do with kosher or not kosher. We're not eating the snail. You're allowed to use products that come from an animal, even though they're not kosher. For example, there's no prohibition in throwing a football that's made from the skin of a pig.
I understand that, but if you have two non-kosher sources, and they have sort of the same properties and would also remind you of the sea, if you go back to why we do it, why can't you use another one that has the same properties instead of the snail? I mean, what's so special about the snail? Since I can understand if it was a kosher animal, that would be different, but it isn't.
Oh, so well, first of all, you're saying why don't we use the one that comes from the plant? You're saying why not prefer the one that, even if since they're chemically indistinguishable?
Right.
So the Talmud takes it as a given that the mitzvah, to do the mitzvah, is it has to come from the snail. And the Talmud doesn't explain why that is. Well, the only way to understand it is one is called the tchelet of the Torah. The Torah refers to tchelet, which is the stuff that comes from the snail, and the other looks like it, but it's not it. It's a forgery. It's just from the plant. So they're indistinguishable at first glance, but one is the mitzvah, one is not. Also, the Talmud says even though they look the same, they're not actually the same, because the Talmud goes through a test, two tests. One is if you bake it in the oven in yeast, or if you soak it in a detergent. The real one, the tchelet, will not diminish, but the indigo will diminish. So that's a big difference. But the answer is that one is tchelet of the Bible, and the other is not. So that's why we need to know which is which.
Okay. I'm unclear why this is. What do we learn out of this for our lives? I mean, being practical.
Okay. So first of all, there's a lot we actually learn from this from our lives. On before we even get to the rest of it, just at this point, what we've already discussed, there's two main points that we learn from it. The first is, hold on, somebody keeps calling me. The first point we learn from it in our lives is that, like I said, the tchelet was in the ancient world reserved for royalty. That was the garment of the Kohen Gadol. So the Torah is telling us each of us is also royalty, and that's why we have the right to wear it. This was called the royal blue. It was prohibited to be worn in many kingdoms because only the king could wear it. But here we're being told that we have an obligation to wear it. We are becoming like the Kohen Gadol. So each of us is royalty. Not that the Kohen Gadol or the king is holier than us. Each of us is, in a sense, this like the Kohen Gadol, like the high priest. We are royalty. We are because we represent the teachings of Hashem, and it's our job to inspire and teach just like the Kohen Gadol, or in a manner similar to the Kohen Gadol. So that's the first reason why this is practical and relevant. And the second reason why it is practical and relevant is because even before I get to the third reason, which is one of the main reasons, and that's the reason I really wanted to talk about, but the second reason why it's practical and relevant is because this is an example of how something disappeared from our faith for 1,500 years. We didn't know anything. We didn't have it. We thought it was lost, and it was reintroduced. That's a really powerful idea. That from the last mention we have of it is the year, in basically around the 6th century. And now we come to the 19th century or the 20th century. And as part of Zionism, it was reintroduced to the Jewish people. And this is a very provocative and inspiring and powerful idea that parts of the Torah that we thought we were done with, we can reintroduce them back into our lives. And there's a lot there that tells us that the Torah is alive. And you think about it like that's what Zionism, and it's a very appealing message for the Zionists when you think about the Hebrew language, which was dead, which the Zionists recreated as a spoken language. We think about the settlement of the land of Israel. So this is part of the Zionist dream. And in fact, if you look at Rabbi Yosef Goldman's box on the screen, his screen is blue and white, and that's the tchelet blue and the white of the tzitzit. So the Israeli flag are the colors of the tzitzit. You notice that? So
yes.
This is the Zionist message. But now there's a third reason why this is relevant, and that is what the Torah says, that the Kohen Gadol wears it for honor and for glory. And the way we dress impacts our lives. And I'm going to read to you a story from the Talmud, which is from tomorrow's Daf Yomi. It's very provocative, but we're all mature here, so we could read this. It's a little, it's for mature audiences, but everybody here is very mature. So, I'm going to read this. So it says the Talmud, there's no mitzvah as easy to do in the Torah so he says as follows: you never have even a light mitzvah written in the Torah whose reward is not paid generously in this world. And as for reward in the world to come, I don't even know how great it will be. Meaning to say, the reward for this mitzvah, which is tzitzis, which is such a easy mitzvah to do, its reward is enormous. In this world, we don't even have to wait for the next world. So the Talmud says, come and learn out from the mitzvah of tzitzis. It's called a light mitzvah because there's no negative commandment, and it's very easy to do. You just buy a pair of tzitzis, you put them on. That's it. How easy is that? And the Talmud now tells a story pretty well known, a very provocative story about how tzitzis saved a man's soul. There was a incident with a man who was he was very careful about the mitzvah of tzitzis, about wearing a talis, even though, as we'll see from the story, there were other parts of his spirituality which he wasn't as careful about. And he heard that there was a harlot in the cities by the sea. Here there was a harlot on the other end of the world that her services were so valued that she took as her fee 400 golden dinars. She took a lot of money. So he sent her the 400 golden dinars and scheduled a time to visit her. When his time came to visit her, he arrived at her house and sat by the doorway. So the harlot's maidservant went and told her, the man who sent you 400 golden dinars has arrived, and he's sitting by the doorway. The harlot said, let him enter. He entered. She prepared 7 beds for him, one above the other, 6 of silver and 1 of gold. And between each pair of beds, there was a silver ladder, and the uppermost bed was a ladder of gold. She ascended the ladders and sat on the uppermost bed, and she wasn't wearing clothing. And he too ascended, and he sat opposite her also without clothing. At that moment, his 4 tzitzis fringes proceeded to pelt him upon the face. Where did they come from? They flew through the sky. The Torah tells us that the tzitzis will guard you. You will see them and you'll remember them, and you won't walk after your heart and after your eyes that you're lusting after. The tzitzis came from out of nowhere and smacked them in the face. That's what it says in the Talmud. He was embarrassed and he quickly ran down and sat on the ground. So she ran after him and she also sat on the ground. She said to him, by the master of Rome, she was an idolater. She says, by the life of Caesar, basically, I'm not going to leave until you tell me what flaw you saw in me. And he said, I swear I never saw a woman as beautiful as you, but there's one commandment that Hashem gave us, and it's called tzitzis. And it says in this commandment, I am Hashem your God, twice. It says, I'm your Hashem your God who removed you out of Egypt. I am Hashem your God. I am the one who's going to exact punishment from the corrupt, and I am the one who's going to pay a reward to the righteous. Now, at this moment, these 4 fringes, the tzitzis, appeared to me like 4 witnesses that were attesting to the sin I was about to commit. So I don't want any part of this. So she said to him, I'm not leaving until you tell me what your name is, what's the name of your city, what's the name of your teacher, where do you study, what's the name of your yeshiva. So he wrote it down and he gave it to her. He wrote it down and he gave her all the information. She arose and she divided up her possessions into 3 parts. 1/3 she gave to the government. She had to bribe them because they didn't want to let her leave, it says Rashi. Another part she gave to the poor, and the 3rd part she took with her. And she came to the base medrash of Rabbi Akiva. She said, Rabbi, I want to become Jewish. He said, my daughter, why do you want to convert? Do you really want to convert for the sake of heaven? Maybe you just want to convert because you have your eyes to marry one of the students. So she brought out this writing that the man had given her, and she gave it to him, and she told him the whole story. Basically, she got the student in trouble, probably. So he said to her, go and collect your acquisition, meaning say you can marry the student that you encountered at your home. It doesn't tell us who the student was. It doesn't tell us who the student was, actually. And she used those same linens that have been arranged in a prohibited manner. She now arranged for them to be used permissively. Anyway, the story, what's the point of this story? What's the point of this story? Let me pause for a second, see if anybody, everybody, what is the point of this story? To my mind, the magic of the story is not the tzitzit flying through the air. The magic of the story is that the tzitzit reminded him of who he was. That's the magic of the tzitzit, that when the tzitzit always reminds us who we are. That the kavod tifaret, the honor and the glory, means for our honor and our glory. The clothing that we wear should remind us of who we are and what we're trying to accomplish with our lives. We shouldn't, when we put on clothing, it's not just an opportunity to make ourselves look good. It's an opportunity to demonstrate what our beliefs are, what our values are, who we want to aspire to be. I'll just tell everybody here. Are you trying to say something, Jeff?
Yeah. Don't you need to preface it with the significance of the gematria and the 613 commandments, and that you surround yourself with the 613 commandments? That's what the tzitzit are all about.
But the Talmud says that in today's Daf Yomi, the Talmud says that the tzitzit, well, it says it in the Torah. You see them and you remember all of the commandments. You see the tzitzit, ritem oto uzachartem. You see the tzitzit and you remember. But the strings here, he holds the strings and he's reminded of what he is about. The tzitzit is a garment that we wear to remind us of our values. That's in just a very simple way. That's what the tzitzit are. It reminds us of our values. And all our clothing is an opportunity to do that, to wear the special clothing. Today, the tzitzit are worn in synagogue as a talit, or non-Hasidic men wear them under their shirts. But in the ancient world, they wore togas, so they were worn. They were displayed at all times. You shall see them. It was something that everybody saw. In this context, I mean, that's what I'm trying to say here. The clothing we wear it demonstrates our values and our beliefs. That's the concept, and it can inspire us. So let me share with people what I just decided. I'll share it after Aya shares. Yes, Aya. Okay, Aya's asking, if it's such an important mitzvah, why is it required only of men and not of women? So the Talmud has this dispute in Tractate Menachot 43a. Is it a requirement of women? First of all, the Gemara there tells the story of Rav Yehuda, who put the tzitzit on the garments of his wife. He was of the position that women are supposed to wear it. The Talmud says, the Talmud contains a dispute between the rabbis, who we normally would follow, and Rabbi Shimon, a minority opinion, about whether or not women are obligated in tzitzit. And the rabbis say that they are, and Rabbi Shimon says that they're not. And the reason why Rabbi Shimon says they're not is because since tzitzit, according to Rabbi Shimon, are not supposed to be worn, or are not required to be worn on the garments that are worn at night, nighttime clothing, because you have to see it and you don't see it at night. Therefore, he says it's a time-bound positive commandment, which women are exempt from. And even though normally we would follow the majority opinion, in this case, we follow the opinion of Rabbi Shimon that women are not obligated in tzitzit. Now, should women, even though they're not obligated, there are other commandments which women are not obligated to do, which they do anyway. So, like, for example, women are not obligated to shake the lulav and etrog because it's a time-bound positive commandment, but they often do so. So what about tzitzit? So the Ramah says that even though women in general can do time-bound positive commandments, he discourages it because it's called michse kiyura. For many years, if the woman would be the only one who wears tzitzit in the town, then she looks like she's haughty because nobody else does it and she does it. And then another concern is that it was the garment. The Targum Yonas and Uziel says that it's became over time, since only men wore it, it became the garments of a man, and so therefore it was prohibited. But if a woman would be wearing it in a discreet manner, and also if it would be on a garment that's more feminine, let's say like a feminine garment, then it wouldn't be a problem for her to wear it. And I know women who wear, Orthodox women who wear the tzitzit in this manner, and who are very much role models to many people. I mean, they could talk about it. I don't have to say their names, but I know them. So women are not, according to the ruling position, women are not obligated to wear it, but under certain circumstances, it's okay for them to wear it. Now the question, so I was just going to share one other thing. So I'm very much a believer in this idea that the clothes that when you put on clothing, you have an opportunity to make a statement about your values and your beliefs. And so one of the reasons why I wear the shtreimel is because I make a statement that's an opportunity to connect to the Hasidic values or the Hasidic beliefs, the Hasidic side of my spirituality. But the problem is in Israel, it means something else. When you wear the shtreimel in Israel and the bekisha, that makes it feel like you're part of the community that doesn't support serving in the Israeli Defense Forces, or is anti the Israeli Defense Forces, which I don't want to support. I very much want to support the Chayalim. They're the holiest Jews of all, and I go to the bases and they get very excited. So now I ordered something. I'm going to be the only person in the world to have this. You listening? Everybody paying attention? I ordered, and God willing, it should come in 2 weeks, a shtreimel to match the colors of the IDF uniform. A shtreimel is the fur hat. It's going to match the colors of the IDF uniform. And a bekisha is the robe, to match the colors of the IDF uniform. So now when I go to the army bases of the Chayalim, and I'm going to go, God willing, soon, because I've written now three items for Chayalim who were killed. I'm writing the second Torah, and I wrote a Megillah, and I go to the army bases, and they get very excited when I go to support them. And now they'll see me in the shtreimel and bekisha. They'll be so happy. It'll be explosive. It'll just be overwhelming with joy, and everybody will know exactly what I'm believing. That I believe in supporting the Chayalim. That the Chayalim are the holiest. And so I'm attaching it to my garments, which represent my holiness. And it'll be a very powerful, hopefully it'll make a big impact. So that's L'chavod U'Tifaret.
All right.
Yeah, did you want to say something, Jeff?
Yeah, can they give general bars on it? You should be a general.
I didn't want to put a general bar on it because I didn't want to make it look like I'm a general. I just kept the color. Okay. I kept the color. And I didn't want to put my logo of our yeshiva on. I just wanted to keep it simple, low key. I wanted to keep it low key.
Okay. Well, so, I think you should at least have the Kohen Gadol's little crown.
No, but I put in the shtreimel. You'll see I put a dome on it with the color of the IDF. It's called a kaiver. They call it a kaiver rochel dome.
Okay. I hope you'll wear it at our shul.
Of course I'll wear it, of course. Okay, so so this idea of let me just I guess we just have time for, let's say, one or two more ideas about Kavod U'Tifaret. The Sfas Emes talks about, we'll just say one idea here. The Sfas Emes talks about the idea that right before the commandment to put on these clothing was the commandment of illuminating the menorah with pure olive oil. So the oil represents the intellect and the brain. That has to be pure. And the garments of the Kohanim, they hint to the body, the garments of the soul. And so therefore we have to combine the two. We have to take the oil, which represents the Torah, the intellect, and combine it with the garments, which represent the body. And that's how we have that's what's required. So, basically, I guess in another way to say this is the Torah understood that the Kohen Gadol, even before Instagram and TikTok and the internet, understood the Kohen Gadol had to have what you call in the modern world drip. You had to have a presence if you want to have an impact. So that's the so it's supposed to, again, let's just summarize what we saw, that it's supposed to remind us to keep the mitzvos, but also supposed to remind us of what we're trying to accomplish and help us transmit the message. Anyway, those are my teachings for today. I'll stop here, take any questions if anybody, or comments.